I'd been using my cab as a bedroom for 3 straight months when I picked up the fare that would tear my life apart and then piece it back together. I was at the absolute bottom, living out of my car, perpetually broke, surviving on cheap truck stop coffee and whatever cash tips I could scrounge. And then he got in. This sharply dressed man slid into my back seat, caught my eye in the rearview mirror, and his face went white. "My God," he breathed. "You're the spitting image of my brother." But he vanished 25 years ago. Before we get into all of that, I want you to tell me in the comments, what's the most mind-blowing coincidence you've ever experienced with a total stranger? And if you connect with stories about family, rediscovery, and the long road home, make sure to follow this page so you never miss what's coming next. Just 6 months ago, my life was something you'd see in a catalogue. I had a house in a quiet suburban neighbourhood, a wife who always looked perfect in our family photos, 2 great kids who called me dad, and a landscaping business I'd built from the ground up that paid the mortgage and kept us comfortable. I wasn't a millionaire, but I was secure. I was a provider. Then, in the span of about 2 weeks, the whole thing imploded. It started with the business. Our largest commercial client, a new housing development, declared bankruptcy and defaulted on a massive payment. We couldn't make payroll. I had to sit down with 12 good, hard-working guys, men who had trusted me for years, and tell them they were out of a job. Then I had to lock the gate to the yard for the last time and hand the keys to the bank. 20 years of sweat and dirt gone in a flash. My wife, Claire, reacted to the news with predictable panic. "How could you not have a contingency plan?" she yelled, her voice echoing in our spacious kitchen as she paced back and forth. "How could you be so reckless with our lives?" I tried to explain the market, the client's assurances, the simple, brutal fact that sometimes businesses fail. But Claire wasn't listening. She had already decided I was the sole author of our misfortune. Within a week, she had a lawyer on the phone, filed for divorce, and was packing her bags and the kids to move back in with her mother. Our kids, Maya, 9, and Sam, 7. "I just can't do this anymore, Leo," she said, not looking at me as she folded their little clothes into suitcases. "I can't live with this constant uncertainty. The kids need a stable home." "I'll get another job," I pleaded. "I'll fix this, I swear." "When? How?" She shot back, her words like daggers. "You're 43 years old, Leo. You don't have a college degree, and your business just went belly up. Who's going to take a chance on you now?" The worst part wasn't the cruelty in her voice. It was the truth in her words. I had poured my entire adult life into one company, one specific skill set. My entire professional network was tied to a business that no longer existed. I was starting from scratch at an age when my peers were looking at their 401ks and planning for retirement. The bank foreclosed on the house 2 months after that. I managed to find a small studio apartment across town that reeked of stale smoke and quiet desperation. But even its cheap rent became impossible when my unemployment checks stopped coming. My search for a management position in landscaping or construction was a series of closed doors. That's what led me to the cab. I used the last of my savings to buy a beat-up old Ford sedan from a guy retiring from the business. The yellow paint was faded to a sickly mustard colour. The odometer had clocked over 200,000 miles, and the passenger seat was a testament to the holding power of grey duct tape. It was a wreck, but it was mine, and it was a way to earn. The cab company I leased the medallion from took a staggering 60% of every fare. What was left was barely enough for gas, instant noodles, and the grimy motel room I was renting by the week. When that, too, became a luxury I couldn't afford, I started sleeping in the driver's seat. 3 months of that life had worn me down to a nub. I'd use truck stop showers, brush my teeth in the fluorescent glare of gas station bathrooms, and try to smooth the wrinkles out of the one clean shirt I kept hanging in the back. I could see the quick, dismissive judgments in the eyes of my passengers. I had become invisible, another one of the city's ghosts, a walking, driving reminder of how thin the ice really is for everyone. The morning I picked up Nathan, I'd been up since 4 a.m, circling the airport, hoping to catch the first wave of business travelers. I'd cleared maybe $30 in fares, enough to fill the tank and get a coffee, but not much more. My spine was a knotted rope from another night contorted in the driver's seat, and a grim thought was starting to take root. I couldn't do this for much longer. That's when the dispatch crackled. A pickup at the Grandview Hotel downtown, destination airport. The Grandview was the kind of place I used to stay for business conferences back in my other life. Pulling my rust bucket up to the polished valet stand, I felt a familiar pang of shame. My cab looked like a stray dog in a line of purebreds. The passenger was waiting on the curb, tapping away at his phone. He was in his mid-40s, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car, and holding a leather briefcase. He had that air of effortless confidence that comes from never having to wonder where your next meal is coming from. "Airport?" I asked, my voice hoarse as he settled into the back. "Actually, slight change of plans," he said. "Could you take me to 400 Beacon Plaza, please?" I pulled away from the hotel, glancing in the rearview mirror to merge into traffic, and that's when I saw his face. He was staring at me, his phone forgotten in his lap, with an expression of pure, unadulterated shock. Or was it recognition? "Is everything all right back there?" I asked. He didn't reply for a long moment, just kept staring as if he'd seen a ghost. Finally, he leaned forward, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, this is going to sound incredibly strange, but what's your name?" "Leo," I said, trying to keep my focus on the road. "Just Leo." "Just Leo?" No last name. I risked another look in the mirror. His face was ashen. "Look, if this is making you uncomfortable, I can pull over and you can get another cab." No, it's not that," he said quickly. "It's just, you look exactly like someone I once knew. The resemblance it's uncanny." I'd heard it before. People would occasionally say I had a familiar face, that I reminded them of an uncle or a former co-worker. I guess I just have one of those generic faces. "Yeah, I get that sometimes. What's your last name?" He pressed again, his intensity unnerving. "I don't have one. I don't know it." The words just slipped out. I usually dodged this topic, but something in his gaze made me be honest. You don't know your own last name?" I pulled up to a red light and finally turned in my seat to face him. "I was in an accident about 25 years ago, a serious head injury. I lost most of my memories from before that day. The hospital staff called me a John Doe, but I picked the name Leo for myself when I got out. I liked it." He was staring at me, his eyes wide, as if I'd just sprouted a second head. 25 years ago? How old were you?" "The doctors estimated I was about 18. "Why are you asking all this?" The light turned green, but I didn't move. A car behind me blared its horn. "My brother," he said, his voice quiet and shaky. "My younger brother. He went missing 25 years ago. He was 18, and you—" He shook his head, struggling for words. "You look exactly like him, like how he would look today." I pulled the car through the intersection, my own hands starting to tremble on the steering wheel. "That's a hell of a coincidence." "Is it?" He leaned even closer. "What do you remember about your accident?" "Almost nothing. I was found on the side of a highway, about 50 miles from the city. No wallet, no ID. Nobody ever filed a missing person report that matched my description. The cops just assumed I was a runaway who'd been hitchhiking. The trauma wiped the slate clean. 50 miles from the city," he repeated, the words hanging in the air. "That's the same stretch of highway my brother was on when he disappeared." I couldn't breathe. I pulled the cab over to the side of the road, slamming the gear shift into park. My heart was a drum against my ribs. "Look, Mr. Vance." "Nathan Vance." "Mr. Vance, I think you've got to be mistaken. I mean, the odds of this are astronomical." "My brother's name was Leo," he said softly. The words struck me with the force of a physical blow. I spun around in my seat to face him completely. "What did you just say?" "My brother. His name was Leo Vance. He was 18 when he vanished. And you?" He fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking as much as mine. He scrolled frantically through his photos. "You look just like our father did at your age." He turned the screen toward me. It was an old, slightly faded family portrait. A man and a woman smiling, flanked by two boys. One looked to be in his early 20s, the other was a teenager. The younger boy had my eyes, my jawline, my smile. It was like looking at a photograph of myself from a lifetime ago. "That's impossible," I whispered, my voice cracking. is it? Nathan's voice was gentle now, laced with a fragile hope. Why do you think you chose that name? Leo? Don't you think it's possible that some deep, forgotten part of you remembered that it was your real name? I stared at the image on the phone until the faces blurred through my tears. The resemblance was undeniable, but my mind was a vortex of confusion and denial. This makes no sense, I stammered. If I had a family, wouldn't someone have reported me missing? Wouldn't someone have come looking for me? We did, Nathan said, his own voice thick with emotion. God, Leo, we never ever stopped looking. The police, private detectives, search parties. We spent a fortune. We spent years trying to find you. Then why didn't you? I was laid up in a hospital for months. My photo was in the local papers. Nathan's face fell. A shadow of old pain crossed his features. You were found 50 miles out of town. That's a different county, a different police jurisdiction, different newspapers. He paused, and the next words came out heavy with grief. And our parents died in a car crash 6 months after you disappeared. The weight of it all crushed down on me. Your parents? They died? Our parents, he corrected me, his voice soft but firm. And yes, they were on their way home from a meeting with yet another private investigator. They never, ever gave up hope. I felt something shatter deep inside my chest. For all these years, I'd carried a vague, abstract fantasy about a family. I'd imagined parents who might still be thinking of me, siblings who might miss their brother. It had never once occurred to me that they could be gone. I'm so sorry. Don't be. None of this is your fault. Nathan leaned forward again, his eyes locking onto mine. Leo, do you remember anything? Anything at all from before the accident? I closed my eyes, trying to peer into the black void of my past. There are dreams sometimes, just fragments, a woman's voice, singing a lullaby, the smell of cinnamon rolls baking, a dog, a big, clumsy golden retriever, maybe. But the doctors always said that could just be my brain manufacturing memories to fill the void. Mom always sang when she baked, Nathan said, his voice catching. And we had a golden retriever named Rusty. You adored that dog. A flicker, the feeling of warm fur under my hand, a wet nose bumping my face, the distant echo of happy barking. It was there for a second, a ghost of a memory, and then it was gone. Maybe? I don't know. What about this? Nathan pulled out his wallet and carefully extracted another photo, this one worn and creased at the edges. It showed 2 boys, clearly brothers, building a lopsided snowman in a backyard. They were both grinning from ear to ear. Christmas, 1998. You were 17. I studied the face of the younger boy. His smile was familiar, but in the abstract way your own reflection is familiar. You recognize it as you, but the connection feels strangely distant. I want to believe you, I said, my voice choked. But what if this is all just a crazy coincidence? What if you're wrong? Then we find out for sure, he said with sudden resolve. A DNA test. It'll take a few days, but it will give us a definitive answer. I looked at him, this stranger who was offering me not just a past, but an identity, and I felt a sensation I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a very long time. Hope. It was exhilarating and terrifying. A thought struck me. Why were you taking a taxi anyway? You look like you can afford a private car. Nathan managed a small, wry smile, the first I'd seen, and it looked so much like mine. My car's in the shop for a service. I was trying to get a rideshare, but the app was glitching out, so I just called for a cab. If I hadn't... He trailed off, shaking his head in disbelief. 25 years of searching, and I find you because of a faulty phone app. If you found me, I corrected gently. We don't know anything for sure yet. No, he agreed, his eyes shining. But, Leo, I really, really hope we do. I glanced down at the meter, which had been ticking away this entire time. Your fare is going to be astronomical if we just sit here. I don't give a damn about the fare, Nathan said. Can I ask you something else? Sure. Are you okay? I mean, with your job, your living situation, all of it. A hot flush of shame crept up my neck. I'm between places at the moment. The cab gig is just temporary. Nathan's expression softened with a dawning horror and compassion. "You're homeless." It wasn't a question. I didn't have the energy to deny it. "It's not forever. I'm figuring things out." "Jesus, Leo, for how long?" "About 3 months." I squared my shoulders. "Look, I don't need your charity." "It's not charity if you're my brother," he said, his voice firm. "And even if you're not, nobody should have to live in their car." I wanted to argue, to cling to the last tattered shreds of my pride, but I was so tired, so bone-deep tired of pretending I had it all under control, of acting like sleeping in a cab was some kind of strategic choice and not the last stop before total despair. "What do you want to do?" I asked, finally surrendering. "First, we go get that DNA test. Then, no matter what the results say, we get you a safe place to stay while we sort this out." "I can't afford—" "I can," Nathan said simply. "Let me help you, please." I looked at this man, this stranger who might be my brother, who was offering me a lifeline woven from hope and kindness, and I made a decision that would change the course of my life forever. "Okay," I said, "let's go find out who I really am." That night, Nathan insisted on getting me a hotel room. It wasn't the Grandview, just a clean, quiet place with a real bed that didn't require me to fold my body in half. I hadn't slept on a proper mattress in what felt like an eternity, and when I woke up the next morning, I felt more human than I had in ages. He picked me up in a rental car, and we drove in near Silence to a private lab that specialized in DNA testing. The process itself was quick and clinical, a simple cheek swab, some forms to sign, but the weight of what it all meant felt immense. "Results will be ready in 3 to 5 business days," the technician told us cheerfully, handing us a receipt. "So what now?" I asked as we walked back to the car. "What do we do while we wait?" "We start digging," Nathan replied. "I kept everything, every police report, every newspaper clipping, every file from the private eyes. Maybe seeing it will jog something loose." Nathan's apartment was a stunning loft in a converted warehouse downtown, with exposed brick walls, soaring ceilings, and a view that screamed success. It was a world away from the sad little studio I'd lost, and an entire galaxy away from the cramped confines of my cab. "You've done well for yourself," I commented, taking it all in. "I got lucky, mostly. Started a software company right out of college, sold it a few years back. The inheritance helped, of course. But Leo, if you're who I think you are, then half of everything our parents left is legally yours. They left their estate to us in equal shares. I don't want your money," I said immediately. "It's not my money," he corrected. "It's our money. Our parents worked their entire lives to build a future for their sons, both of them." He led me into a spare room that served as his home office. In the corner stood a heavy, grey, 4-drawer filing cabinet. "This," he said, tapping its metal side, "is the search for you." He sighed. "Or, it was. I officially stopped looking about 5 years ago." The words caught me off guard. "You stopped?" Nathan sank heavily into his desk chair. "I had to. It was eating me alive. 20 years of chasing down leads that went nowhere, following up on false sightings, getting my hopes up just to have them crushed. My relationships were falling apart because I was obsessed with finding a ghost. My work was suffering. My therapist finally convinced me I had to accept that you were probably gone, that the search was keeping me from living my own life." He pulled open the top drawer, revealing a meticulous system of folders with tabs: police reports, PI files, sightings, hospitals. "I tried, Leo. God, I tried. I locked this cabinet and swore I wouldn't open it again. I tried to build a life that didn't revolve around you being missing. What changed?" Nathan looked up at me, his expression a complicated mix of guilt and hope. "Nothing. Nothing changed. That's the thing. That's why when I saw you in that cab, when you said your name was Leo, it felt like the universe was smacking me in the head, telling me I was right to never truly give up. Even when I wasn't actively looking, a part of me always knew you were still out there." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of his 25-year vigil filling the room. "What happened?" I asked softly. "The day I disappeared. You and Dad got into a huge fight. I can't even remember what it was about now. Something trivial, like most teenage arguments. You stormed out of the house, shouting that you were going to walk to your friend Mark's place across town. That was the last time any of us saw you. I was walking. For the first couple of miles, yeah. A neighbor saw you get into a car, an older blue sedan. She couldn't see the driver or make out the license plate, but she was certain it was you. So I was picked up by someone. That was always the leading theory. The police ran checks on every known predator in a 100-mile radius. They interviewed all your friends, everyone at school. They came up with absolutely nothing. He unrolled a large map from one of the folders, its surface dotted with dozens of red pins. These are all the places we looked. Every abandoned building, every homeless shelter, every hospital, every morgue. We contacted police departments in 6 different states. We put your picture on some of the earliest missing person websites, before social media was even a thing. I traced the lines on the map with my finger, trying to imagine Nathan, barely an adult himself, trying to orchestrate this massive search while also grieving the sudden loss of his parents. This must have taken over your entire life. It did, he admitted. I almost failed out of college. But I couldn't just let it go. Not when I knew you were out there, somewhere. My eyes landed on a yellowed newspaper clipping. Local teen found after highway accident. The date matched the timeline of my own accident. Is this, that's you? Or we've always thought it was you? Look at the location. I read the short article. An unidentified male, estimated to be 18 years old, was found unconscious beside Highway 84, approximately 50 miles east of the city. He is suffering from severe head trauma and has no identification. It was my story, exactly as I'd been told it. But why didn't anyone make the connection to your missing brother? Nathan's jaw tightened. Because the cops in that county never communicated with the cops in our county. Because you were a John Doe, and we were looking for Leo Vance. And by the time my investigator found this article, years had passed. Years? 5 years. By then, John Doe had been discharged from the hospital. The trail was cold. No forwarding address, no social security number they could trace. You had vanished all over again. I sank into a nearby chair, the air knocked out of me. So you've known this was a possibility for 20 years? I've known about this specific John Doe for 20 years, yes. But Leo, there have been dozens of John Does, dozens of maybes. I've chased down every single one. Most were dead ends. What made this one different? Nathan reached into another folder and pulled out a thick file. The PI managed to get a copy of the hospital's intake report. The injuries were consistent with being ejected from a moving vehicle, but there was something else. He handed me a photocopy of a medical chart. Most of it was illegible doctor's scrawl, but one sentence was circled in red. Patient has a distinct scar on his left shoulder blade, crescent-shaped, approximately 2 inches in length. I instinctively reached back over my shoulder, my fingers finding the familiar ridge of skin I'd had for as long as I could remember. I know about that scar, I said. I gave it to you, Nathan said, his voice thick. You were 4. I pushed you off your tricycle. You landed on the edge of the concrete driveway. It bled like crazy. Mom always said it healed into the shape of a little moon. The room began to tilt. The hotel, the cab, the last 25 years of my life swirled around me. I tore off my shirt and turned my back to him. Is this it? I heard him gasp, a sharp, choked sound. Oh my God, Leo, that's it. That's exactly it. I slowly put my shirt back on, my hands shaking uncontrollably. We don't need to wait for the DNA results, do we? No, Nathan said, his voice breaking as he finally closed the distance between us and wrapped me in a fierce, desperate hug. We don't. You're home. You're my brother. The DNA results came back 3 days later, a formality at that point. 99.98% probability of a full sibling relationship. I was Leo Vance. The boy who had vanished into the rain 25 years ago was sitting in his brother's apartment. I have to know what happened, I said, staring at the official report on the coffee table. Nathan had already made the call. I've hired a new investigator. a retired homicide detective named Riley. She specializes in cold cases. If there are answers, she'll find them. It took Detective Riley 2 weeks. 2 weeks to unravel a 25-year-old mystery. "I found the driver," she told us, her voice calm and professional as we sat in her small, cluttered office. "His name was Carl Brennan. He passed away 3 years ago from cancer, but before he died, he confessed everything to his son." Nathan and I sat in stunned silence as she laid it all out. Brennan had been driving home drunk that night. He saw me walking on the shoulder of the highway and offered me a ride. Trying to get out of the cold, I got in. About 20 miles down the road, he lost control. "The accident," I murmured. "Yes," she confirmed. "His car went off the road and rolled several times. He was thrown clear, ended up with just some bruises. You," she paused, her expression softening, "were not as lucky. You were unconscious, bleeding badly. He panicked. He just left me there," Nathan said, his voice flat and cold. "He left you there," Riley affirmed. "Drove home in his damaged car, and the next day he reported it stolen. By the time police found the wreck, you had already been found by a passing truck driver and were on your way to the hospital, and he never said a word. Not for 25 years, but guilt is a heavy burden. On his deathbed, he told his son the whole story. The son has been living with that secret for 3 years. When I tracked him down, he was almost relieved to finally tell someone. I felt a strange, hollow mix of emotions. A burning anger at the man who had left me to die, but also a profound relief. The big, black question mark that had defined my existence was finally gone. After we left her office, we drove in silence for a long time. Finally, Nathan pulled into the parking lot of a small park. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Empty," I said honestly. I thought knowing the truth would feel like, I don't know, victory. But it's just sad. 25 years of my life, of your life, of our parents' lives, all derailed because a drunk was too cowardly to make a phone call. Yeah. He looked out at the playground, at the swings swaying in the breeze. "Leo, what if you never get the memories back? Then we make new ones," I said, surprised by my own conviction. "You're my brother. That part doesn't change, whether I remember our childhood or not. I've been homeless. I've been living in a cab. My driver's license doesn't even have a real last name on it. So we fix it," he said simply. "All of it. We get you a proper apartment. We go to court and get your name legally changed back. We figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life. I don't want your charity, Nathan. It's not charity," he said, his voice firm. "It's family. It's what Mom and Dad would have wanted. It's what I want." I looked at this man who had spent half his life looking for me, who had refused to give up hope. "What if I'm not the brother you remember? What if I'm too broken?" "Then you're still my brother," he said. "Just a different version than the one I was expecting." Later that night, I lay awake in the hotel room Nathan was still paying for, and I thought about who I was. For 25 years, I'd been a man without a story. Now I had to figure out how to be a man with a future. A few days after the DNA confirmation, Nathan and I were in his living room, surrounded by takeout boxes. The conversation was getting easier, but there was still a 25-year chasm between us. "Can I ask you something?" he said, putting down his chopsticks. "What was it like? Waking up at 18 with no name, no memory, no anything?" I leaned back, trying to find the words. "Terrifying," I said. "The hospital social worker didn't know what to do with me. I was in a grey area, maybe a minor, maybe an adult. The system was swamped. They helped me get a social security number and a GED, and then they basically wished me luck. God, you were just a kid. A kid with a scrambled brain and no past. I took cash jobs at first, manual labour on construction sites, lived in a series of rundown boarding houses, but I was a hard worker and I had a knack for it. I worked my way up from labourer to foreman, and eventually I was managing projects for a decent-sized company. I was reliable and I was hungry. That's when I decided to start my own landscaping business. Nothing huge, just residential stuff. It grew slowly, by word of mouth. That's amazing, to build a business from nothing. It helped that I didn't know any better, I said with a half smile. I met Claire when I was redoing the landscaping for her apartment complex. She was a school teacher. She was stable and kind, and she never pushed for details about my past, which was a relief. When did you get married? I was 33. We had Maya 2 years later, and then Sam came along. My voice caught. They're my whole world, Nathan. Maya has this incredible laugh, and Sam collects rocks. His pockets are always full of them. He thinks they're treasure. Nathan's expression was full of compassion. Do you get to see them? Every other weekend, when I could scrape together the gas money. Claire moved in with her mother an hour away. The kids don't get it. They don't understand why Daddy lives in a car now, why I can't take them for ice cream. I scrubbed my hands over my face. Maya asked me last month if I was sick because I looked so tired. How do you explain to a 9-year-old that your life has completely fallen apart? You don't have to live that way anymore, Nathan said softly. We can fix this. I know, it's hard to let myself believe it. For 25 years, I've been Leo Nobody, the guy with no history, no family, no safety net. When it all went wrong, there was nobody to call. You're not alone now, Nathan said firmly. And your kids, Maya and Sam, they're my niece and nephew. They're our family. The thought hit me with surprising force. I hadn't even considered that. Well, you'd better start, he said, reading my expression. Because I want to meet them. I want to be the uncle who spoils them rotten. For the first time in a very long time, I felt a flicker of real hope for my children's future. 2 weeks later, I stood in the parking lot of a family-style restaurant, watching my brother pace nervously by his rental car. You're more stressed now than you were waiting for the DNA results, I teased. I've never been an uncle before, he said, smoothing his shirt for the 10th time. What if they hate me? They're 7 and 9, Nathan, not a parole board. Just be yourself. Then Claire's minivan pulled in, and I felt that familiar ache of love and loss. Maya burst out of the car first, her dark hair flying, and ran straight into my arms. Daddy! I scooped her up, burying my face in her hair. Hey, sweetie, I missed you. Sam followed more slowly, clutching a new set of rocks. Dad, who's that? I knelt down. Maya, Sam, this is someone very important. This is your Uncle Nathan. Maya's eyes went wide. We have an uncle. You do now, Nathan said, crouching down to their level. I have been waiting to meet you two for a very, very long time. Dad said we didn't have any family, Sam said, studying Nathan with intense curiosity. Well, sometimes family has a funny way of finding you, Nathan said gently. What do you have there? Sam proudly opened his palm, and soon he and Nathan were deep in a very serious discussion about geology. I caught Claire's eye. She looked back at Nathan, who was now showing Maya something on his phone, and a small, real smile touched her lips. He seems wonderful, she said. As I told you, I began. Our parents' estate. Nathan is insisting on splitting it. I can provide for the kids now, Claire. Real support. I want to be a father to them again. I want that too, she said, and the relief in her voice was palpable. It was killing me to see you struggling like that. It was scaring them. She watched as Sam ran back to Nathan, tugging on his sleeve. Now they can have their dad back. And an uncle who clearly adores them already. Dad! Sam yelled. Uncle Nathan has a house with a pool. Can we go? I looked at Claire, who nodded, her smile widening. I think, she said, ruffling Sam's hair, that Uncle Nathan is going to spoil you both rotten. That's the plan, Nathan called out, hoisting Maya onto his shoulders. I've got 25 years of uncling to catch up on. 6 months later, I was making coffee in the kitchen of my own apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and bright, and my name was on the lease. Nathan had stopped by for our now traditional Saturday morning breakfast. The memories hadn't returned in a dramatic flood. They came in trickles, a flash of a memory at the sound of Nathan's laugh, a vague sense of familiarity when we visited our parents' graves, little echoes of a life I'd almost forgotten. I've got news, Nathan said. The insurance settlement came through. We had filed a civil suit against Carl Brennan's estate. His insurance had agreed to a settlement that would cover my initial medical bills and provide compensation for the lost years. It was enough to truly start over. I've been thinking, I told him. I don't want to go back into landscaping. I want to go back to school. Get a degree. In what? Social work, maybe, or counselling. I keep thinking about all the people I met out there, the ones who fell through the cracks, just like I did. Maybe I can help. You'd be good at that, he said. You get it. You know what it's like to lose everything. And to find it again, I added. Later that day, I drove my old cab, I'd kept it for sentimental reasons, to the cemetery where our parents were buried. I sat on the grass between their headstones. I'm studying for my degree, I told them. Nathan thinks I'm nuts, starting over at 43, but it feels right. The wind whispered through the trees, and for a second, I could almost hear my mother's voice from my dreams, telling me she was proud. I'm going to be okay, I said to them. We both are. You found me, Nathan, and I found myself. Driving home, I thought about the impossible chain of events that had led me here. A faulty app, a cab ride, a face in a mirror. My phone buzzed, a text from Nathan. Dinner tomorrow. Making Mum's spaghetti. Warning, I'm not as good as she was. I texted back, I'll bring dessert. His reply came instantly. Thanks for coming back. I pulled into my parking spot, looked up at the light shining in my apartment window, my home, and felt a sense of belonging that had been absent for 25 years. I was someone's brother. I was someone's son. I was family. The homeless cab driver was gone. In his place was Leo Vance, a man with a past he was rediscovering, a future he was building, and a brother who had proven that some bonds can never be broken. This is a powerful story about hope and the ties that bind us. What is the one thing or person in your life you would never stop searching for? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story of resilience and family resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more emotional stories about finding your way back home. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you're the first to see our next video. End of story.